But for now, a convicted terrorist linked to the 7/7 attacks is set to walk free in Britain, despite the police saying he still remains a risk.
Yes, this is deeply concerning. It's understood that the justice system cannot fully assess whether Haroon Aswat is a terrorist risk due to the mental health treatment that he's receiving.
Well, joining us now is the Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Alan, thanks for joining us. This does seem the most extraordinary story. The guy seems to be having a lesser punishment or a greater risk to the country, quite frankly, because of his claimed mental health issues.
Yeah, it's insanity to go on that terminology. I mean, he's got mental health problems, that much is evident. But the psychiatrist who compiled a report into him believes that even in his non-compromised state, he's an extremist with very dangerous views. The police believe he is still a national security threat, so his case officers think he is still a problem. So whether you think he is mentally ill or not, it is quite clear that he's a danger. And then the idea, therefore, that he's going to be wandering around the community and, kind of emailing the police where he's going and this is sufficient is really for the birds. I mean, this is a man, let's not forget, he was jailed ultimately for trying to set up a terrorist training camp in Oregon. The Americans got him, jailed him. He got deported here eventually to finish his sentence. Now we expect him to behave normally. It's just not there. He's an extremist, dangerous extremist, and one who is a threat to national security.
An accomplice to the 7/7 attacks in this country, in London, that left 52 people dead and many hundreds injured, those horrific attacks that took place in 2005. And by the sounds of this, according to the High Court judge at least, the fact his treatment has been effective, the judge says, and he's going to return to his family, apparently in Batley, in Yorkshire. Now, I imagine if you happen to be living next to this man, you wouldn't be very happy, would you, Alan?
No, particularly as he has given in the past, part of the things he went down for. He had made threats to Christians, Jews, and even fellow Muslims, people who weren't, in his view, as pure as they should be, basically. So no, if I was somebody living in that community, I'd be deeply concerned about the prospect of someone like this returning, someone who, although it is said that his mental health has improved, as we've just stated, the prison report suggests that even when he's not in a mentally ill state, he is still a dangerous extremist. So I'd be worried about him from both counts, and I would certainly be concerned that he might start radicalizing people again.
Hang on, let's just break this down to its very basic steps. If this guy was not a nutcase, if this guy was a completely compos mentis terrorist, he would be having more restrictions placed on him, even in his freed state.
Yes.
But
correct.
if he's an absolute, bonkers individual who's... I'm sorry I'm using all of these terms. I should probably be a bit more politically correct.
You're not being very PC, actually.
I should be more politically correct about it. If he was experiencing psychosis, then we're going to monitor him less.
Apparently he was a paranoid schizophrenic, so that's the sort of thing he was diagnosed with. So that is a bit of a problem, obviously, in that spectrum.
But how on earth have we built a system whereby if you're sane, you're restricted more, and if you are insane, you're restricted less?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, again, we're using these terms, but the reality is there's nothing else to describe this in a system where you could even perhaps game the system, couldn't you? Feign this problem, come out with fewer restrictions, and then reoffend. I mean, it's quite clear that whatever one thinks of his mental illness, as I keep stressing, he is still a dangerous extremist. His views have not changed, and his case officers believe he is still a threat to national security. So although he hasn't filled in the form, there's a formal assessment you have to do to look at this, although that hasn't been able to be proceeded because of his mental health state, it is important to note his case officers do not think he is just going to go back and become a peaceful citizen. They think there might be a concern with him. And therefore, it is doubly perplexing as to why this is happening now.
Yeah, and only 3 years ago, he was telling a psychiatrist that he's a terrorist and he wants to kill Jews, Christians, Muslim enemies, etc., as you said. Is there a risk that there are more like him, so more terrorists of this era who may be up for release soon?
Well, they're all, I mean, a lot of them are up for release. If you look at the people who were jailed between, say, the early 2000s and the late 2010s, then most of them are coming up for their releases now. We've had all sorts of interesting cases where people have come out or are about to be coming out And again, it's quite uncertain as to whether they actually have been de-radicalized or whether they are still a threat or not. And of course, let's not forget, if someone is deemed to be a threat, the cost of monitoring them around the clock, week in, week out, is ruinous to the taxpayer as well. So we have that problem to contend with as well, the cost of monitoring potentially dangerous people coming out of prison. And the whole thing adds up to a perfect storm, to be frank.